Welcome to another NYSAC News video update. I'm Stephen Acquario, the Executive Director of the New York State Association of Counties. And today we're talking about sales tax and our latest county sales tax report, September of 2025. I'm joined by David Lucas, NYSAC's Director of Finance and Intergovernmental Affairs. Dave, great to see you again.
Great to see you, Steve.
Thank you very much, and thanks for taking some time to help unpack sales tax and why it's important for our membership. Perhaps you're new to county government and perhaps you don't understand the revenue streams that fund county government. Dave, largely three types of revenue streams that a typical county government, or every county government, including the city of New York, pretty much uses. There's, of course, property tax, there's sales tax, and state revenue, which would come into a county. Can you talk a little bit about the three streams of revenue and why sales tax is really important to county government these days?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most hated tax out there for a typical taxpayer is the property tax.
Of course.
It's very high in New York for a variety of reasons. So the sales tax provides a good opportunity to reduce pressure on property taxes, hold the line in a best case scenario, and even lower property taxes if your sales tax comes in strong enough. So over time, sales tax has become the number one source of revenue for counties. That's locally administered tax, and we have 36 counties where they collect more sales tax after they share,
Which is important.
Yeah, which is very important
Because many of the other local governments also benefit
they do.
from the economy.
Yep, they do, and it helps lower their property taxes too within a county. So it's a good thing. So that's positive, and it's really been a pretty dramatic increase. And one of the big factors to that was the changes from the Supreme Court in internet sales tax.
So let me just make sure I understood what you just said. You said 36 counties are now collecting more sales tax than they are in property tax.
Yes, that's after they share the revenue. It's still
after they share
the biggest source of revenue from locally.
So let's talk about some top-line results. We recently got an updated report from the state comptroller, or the State Department of Tax and Finance, I think it was, that sort of closing out the month of August.
Yes.
And at the end of August 2025, what are some top-line results? Looking at this year's data, Dave, how are the counties performing? And I think the way that you look at it and the way the state of New York looks at it is they do a year over year.
Yeah.
In other words, at the end of August of 2025, we collected X, and at the end of 2024, we collected Y. Can you sort of unpack that and talk about some of these top-line results, the first 8 months of 2025, some of the variation, and maybe some of the trends that you're seeing?
Yeah, I also look at it based on growth rates. Is the growth going up or down, or that's a key factor.
What do you mean by that?
Well, when you're measuring year over year, is my sales tax going up 10%? Is it going up 5%? Has it fallen? And what are the factors that are driving those trends? Now, it's going to vary by county. Last year wasn't a great year for sales tax collection for the counties. Almost half the counties collected less sales tax in 24 than they did in 23.
Is that related to COVID, the hangover, the economy, the inflation acts that were passed in Washington, D.C., the economy in general was reeling?
Yeah, that all weighs in. We had a big bump up after COVID, after the trough, and all the federal government money coming in. Consumers had money to spend, and they spent it.
It's sort of a reset year now.
Yeah, and then inflation added to it. Every product costs them more, or most products cost them more, and sales tax is based on the retail price. So that lifted the numbers in 22 and 23. And then in 24, everything kind of came back down to, you had much lower inflation. The boom cycle had kind of, paused or had blown itself out. So we were moving into a different period. So we had most counties collecting less. And the growth in 24 was, a fraction of a percent.
So what we're seeing now in August of 2025 and maybe trending forward, is this the new norm?
Yeah, we could be approaching that. I mean, the numbers this year are pretty good. The data through August is the 57 counties are up about 2.5%. You know, when you combine them all together, it varies quite a
From
bit.
last year.
From last year.
How about New York City?
New York City's stronger, about 4.7% higher this year.
Why should we care in upstate what the economy of New York City is doing?
Well, it's important. They generate a lot of income tax revenue for the rest of the state. In addition, you know, they're a big tourism draw for the state. So people may come to New York City. They don't always stay there. They may come up to the Hudson Valley. They may come to other parts of the state, do some hiking in other parts of the state. So just any draw into New York is a benefit for the state overall. It's a good thing, whether it's the city or upstate. It's good to have the tourists coming here and help to boost up these numbers.
Talk about some of the variations, Dave. Was it a pretty much every county was plus 2%, or was every county plus 1%? Were there variations by region, North Country, Southern Tier, Hudson Valley, Capital District, Long Island? What were some of the swings or variations that you might have seen?
Yeah, it was a pretty wide range. The variation across counties is anywhere from a negative 5% up to plus 10%. So that's a pretty big range. There's really no consistent pattern regionally. It's a kind of a mixed bag. You know, some of the border counties are feeling a little bit this year. Some impact from cross-border traffic.
I've seen it firsthand. Yes.
Yeah, and the tariffs is having some impact on them. But other than that, it's a pretty random selection as far as how the sales tax is growing. And as I indicated earlier, it could vary a lot. It could be anything. It could be a late payment from a major vendor, sales tax vendor, that didn't make a payment on time in a given month. It could be a retroactive adjustment. Sometimes those adjustments are spread over multiple years when they're being paid, and when you have to correct it, you have to correct it immediately, the full amount in 1 month. So that can really be a big swing. You could have had a great year last year, and you just can't match that number again for some reason. A new big vendor coming online, like a big box store opens up, or a new car dealership. So there's a variety of reasons why you can see it.
Well, so for the members seeing this report, and perhaps they see something in the green, and perhaps they see one of the counties in the red. Of course, it's important, Dave, but it's not something to completely panic about. It could be an explanation, a rational explanation, like you just said. Something to keep an eye on, but not necessarily something to panic over.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. It's the other thing about sales tax too is the counties get payments monthly from the tax department, but it's a quarterly sales tax. So the reporting on where the sales tax was generated, the state doesn't really know that except for on the quarter. So it's really more important to focus on your quarterly results to give you a better sense of what the trend is, because the monthly payments are going to be volatile up and down. And like you said, there's usually a reasonable explanation for what happened.
So are we in the third quarter right now?
Well, we're in the state fiscal year, so we're in the second quarter based on sales tax.
State fiscal year.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about what's driving the economy right now, Dave. Let's talk about energy, inflation, consumer confidence, that trifecta, if you will, that's out there. Can you talk about how this report highlights those issues of inflation, energy, consumer confidence? But then I want to ask you to tell our listeners, what did you see? What's driving the economy, generally speaking? Is it automobiles? When I look at the report, I continue to see the importance of automobile sales and the importance of internet sales, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. But what's driving the economy? Is it retail, brick and mortar shops, clothing? The price of gasoline, of course, fluctuates and affects how much sales tax we get. But talk a little bit about energy, inflation, consumer sentiment, and sort of what are the big boxes that's driving this economy.
Yeah, from the sales tax perspective, you know, the consumer is king. You know, 2/3 of most spending, it happens at the consumer level in retail, and where we collect most of our sales tax. It's really important that the consumer has confidence going forward about what their expectations are with inflation or the economy. Can they hold on to the job they have? Another thing that happened during COVID was there was a lot of job switching. And people were confidently switching jobs to the point where they were getting 10 and 15% increases in their pay. That market doesn't exist anymore. I mean, the labor market's kind of softened a little bit. The numbers are not as strong as they were, so consumers are less confident. They're pulling back a little bit. That's something we have to watch. On the good side, inflation is quite a bit lower than it used to be during COVID.
Meaning people have more money to spend.
Yes, because for the most part,
Because the cost of goods has come down.
The cost of goods is lower, and their wage increase has been higher than the inflation rate for the most part in most sectors. So that's been a positive. New York's a little challenged right now compared to the rest of the nation. The first part of this state fiscal year, wage increases in New York are far behind where the rest of the country is. We're probably averaging around 0.7%.
Public-private sector? Or?
It's the whole economy combined, where nationally it's around 4%. So that's much.
Say those numbers again?
Yeah, it's 0.5 or 6% in New York for the last several months, and it's about 4% growth in wages.
That's quite a swing.
Yeah, it is. I don't know the reason for the lag. One of the factors is, too, that the wages in New York are quite a bit higher than the national average, so it's harder to stay elevated and to grow at the same rate as the rest of the economy as they catch up to where we are in our general wages. But that's a big factor. Energy prices, that has been a big issue. I'm a little shocked that when I get my cooling bill for the winter, how big my bill seems this year compared to last year. It's a combination of a lot of different things. It's supply issues, rebuilding the infrastructure. We need a lot of upgrades to the grid. So that has to get built into the delivery charges that we receive from the major producers of energy. And that's a nationwide problem. It's not just a New York issue. We're seeing it nationwide. So there's a lot of issues around energy. The problem with energy and the cost of energy and power and electricity to run facilities, manufacturing plants, it builds into the price of just about everything. So if energy's higher than usual, it's going to put pressure on the rest of the economy as from an inflation perspective, which can dampen enthusiasm of the consumer. So that's why we kind of keep an eye on energy in general. Gasoline prices is another thing. There's only so much discretionary spending. That is lower now than it was in the recent past. So that's a positive thing. So we do keep an eye on all those.
What are the top 5 things that where counties collect the vast majority of their sales tax? Is that an easy thing to answer? Do you know that, or off the cuff? What would you think are the top 3 to 5 categories?
Yeah, it would definitely be automobiles in most upstate counties. Automobiles would be near the top. Department stores is it's a category, and we talked about electronic shopping. Electronic shopping that used to be a single category, and it's been changed by the federal government. So what they did is they moved major online retailers into the business sector they really represent. So if they mainly sell clothes online, they're now considered a clothing retailer. So their retail sales get dumped into that category, and so does the sales tax. And Amazon, which sells just about everything, looks like a department store. So they're in that category. So department stores are going to be in your top 5, along with automobiles. Also, some energy for a lot of places is going to be in your top 5, energy transmission, and especially if you have a sales tax on it. If you don't, it's not going to be in your top 5. So those are kind of the big ones. Restaurants is going to be another one. That's almost always in everybody's top 5. So those are kind of the ones that round it out. New York City looks a little different because clearly there's not as many automobiles in the city.
What's driving the revenue in New York City?
The number one source of revenue is tourism based, and also it's restaurants. And they far outstrip number 2 in the city. And they also have a pretty big tech sector where there's sales tax being collected on that. So services is a bigger category in New York City than the rest of the state. But it varies by county. There's a few counties that have very strong service sectors on the tech side where you'll see that sector in the top 10.
All right, we got a few minutes left, Dave. In the remaining few minutes here, I want to go over 2 last categories, if you will, for our membership. One is the Association of Counties was responsible. NYSAC, if you will, championed something about 5-6 years ago called the Marketplace Fairness Act. This is what we know as the internet sales tax. That was our idea. We championed that. Some wanted to divert this money just to the state of New York. Some didn't want to impose this. This has really matured into a very serious revenue source for both the state of New York and the counties and local governments. I think we're probably talking around $5 billion. This is why this association exists. So the counties help fund NYSAC, and in return, NYSAC advocates for counties. This was a law that we drafted, created, worked on, and championed and had it chaptered into law by then Governor Cuomo and the state legislature. Can you talk about the maturity of the Marketplace Fairness Act, the internet sales tax, and the collections we're receiving right now?
Yeah, it was a long battle. I mean, goes back to the early 2000s when the internet was just getting started and people were seeing the potential of how you could use that to sell things or to get information across to different people. So it was a very long road, but it is providing a huge increase for us. It was basically, it added to the sales tax base. It was such a large industry. When we look at the data, we think we added about 4% to the sales tax base by making sure sales tax was collected on it. Another reason counties were very interested, it wasn't just us, it was other local governments as well. It was a market, it was a Main Street versus,
Right.
Parity,
fairness.
Yes, it was a fairness issue.
Between the brick and mortars
Yep.
and the non-brick and mortars.
Yeah, and
one was tax exempt and Main Street was taxable.
Yeah, and at the beginning when the internet was getting up and running, Congress put out rules and things saying, you can't tax the internet, and that sort of got carried over to sales tax. There were some voluntary efforts by some states to do it, but there was a big Supreme Court decision in 2019, I believe, that the Wayfair decision that helped bring that about in here in New York. So since 2019 is when we first implemented the Marketplace and Wayfair Fairness Act here in New York. As you said, we've collected nearly $5 billion. This is just the county side of that equation.
It's substantial.
So the state is seeing it. It's a huge increase. When you really think about it, that law change in the Supreme Court decision that allowed the laws to change a lot easier. I mean, every state that had a sales tax jumped in and said, yep, we're all going to start collecting.
Do all the states right now collect internet sales tax?
If they have a sales tax, they do, yeah. They vary a little bit based on, if we're going to cover services or they exempt some things. But for the most part, any retail transaction that has sales tax involved, if it's done over the internet, other states are collecting it as well. So we've probably been averaging about $380 million a year at the county level in the 57 counties.
Taxable sales?
No, in sales tax from this source. So it's a big source. When you think about that, that's about 7% of the property tax levy. So that additional revenue has helped counties to keep the levies down, and it's a very positive thing. It's also helping to bolster Main Street. And that was one of the reasons we wanted to do it, because we did see some hollowing out of downtown spaces for a variety of reasons, but the competition from the internet compared to what a brick and mortar had, it was a pretty big imbalance there. So this was helping to level the playing field a little bit.
Last question, Dave. Looking ahead, challenges, opportunities as we look to the rest of 2025, going into 2026 with challenges and opportunities, federal government passing legislation, changing how certain government services are going to be provided. What do you think some of the headwinds are or some of the opportunities for New York's county governments regarding sales tax?
Yeah, I mean, we've touched on a couple of the concerns, mainly consumer confidence. It's kind of low right now. It's approaching levels we saw during the Great Recession and also the recession from the early 1980s, not counting the COVID period, because we had a huge dive and then a quick jump up afterwards for that. So we're close to that area now, so that means consumers are going to be cautious going forward for a while. So there could be some damp down there. The energy sector, again, we're really not getting a hold on those costs, and we need to make a lot of investment in that area for just general energy needs. And some of the businesses that are coming online, these data centers that use a tremendous amount of energy. The opportunities are, as sales tax stays strong, or we can have a good handle on it, it helps alleviate pressure on property tax. That's always a good thing. And there's always opportunities through new sectors we see coming up when the economy changes and some of these shifts. So, someone's got to host those big manufacturing facilities, or like the Micron project in Onondaga. I mean, that's a huge opportunity, not just for Onondaga, it's for the whole state. So we have those types of opportunities coming online that are going to, and all those people that work there are going to be buying stuff. They need homes, they need stuff to fill in, put into their homes. That's all opportunity, and it's not just one area. It's a region of the state that's going to benefit from that tremendously. So we need to keep looking at that, and county officials need to keep an eye on those types of opportunities that might be around them.
I want to thank Dave Lucas, the Commissioner of, or the Director of Finance and Intergovernmental Relations, for your insight, Dave, for your dedication, your commitment to producing valuable information and reports for New York County officials. We really appreciate you spending time with us today, and thank you very much.
Thank you.